Why does a single compliment energize you for hours, while one criticism can ruin your entire day? Why do people refresh their phones obsessively after posting something, waiting, hoping, almost craving a response? And more importantly, why does approval from others sometimes feel more powerful than self-respect itself? Today, we are going deep into the psychology of seeking validation, not the surface-level motivation, but the unconscious forces that quietly shape behavior, identity, and even power dynamics. This video is not about shaming the need for validation. It is about understanding it, because what you understand, you can control. Validation is the psychological confirmation that our thoughts, feelings, or actions are acceptable, correct, or valuable. At a basic level, validation answers one fundamental question: do I matter? From an evolutionary perspective, validation was not optional. Early humans depended on group acceptance for survival. Rejection often meant isolation, and isolation meant death. So the brain learned a powerful rule: belonging equals safety. That rule still runs today, even though survival is no longer at stake. The brain does not distinguish between social rejection and physical danger. It activates the same threat circuitry. This is why disapproval hurts physically. The need for validation is shaped early, long before conscious thought. Children learn their value through mirroring. When caregivers respond warmly, the child internalizes, "I am worthy." When approval is conditional, inconsistent, or withheld, the child internalizes, "I must earn worth." This creates two dominant validation patterns. 1. Conditional validation. Love is earned through performance, obedience, achievement, or pleasing others. Result in adulthood: people-pleasing, fear of disappointing others, identity built around external approval too. Insecure validation. Approval is unpredictable, sometimes present, sometimes withdrawn. Result in adulthood: hypersensitivity to feedback, emotional dependence on attention, anxiety. When validation is absent, the adult may appear confident, but internally, their sense of self is fragile. Validation is not just emotional, it is chemical. Every compliment, like, or approval triggers a dopamine release. Dopamine does not signal happiness. It signals anticipation and reward-seeking. This is why validation becomes addictive. The brain learns external approval equals relief. Over time, one compliment is no longer enough. Silence feels like rejection. Self-worth becomes outsourced. This is not weakness. It is neuroconditioning. Social media did not create this. It industrialized it. Here is where validation becomes dangerous. Whoever controls validation controls behavior. In relationships, the partner who needs validation more has less power. In workplaces, employees chase approval instead of autonomy. In society, public opinion becomes a psychological leash. When validation is external, autonomy weakens. The individual begins to ask, "How do I appear?" instead of, "What do I believe?" This is how identity erodes quietly. Psychologist Donald Winnicott described two selves. The false self, constructed for acceptance, performs for approval, feels empty when unobserved. The core self acts from internal values, does not require constant affirmation, feels stable even in solitude. Validation seeking strengthens the false self. And the more the false self is rewarded, the quieter the core self becomes. This is why highly praised individuals can still feel deeply insecure. External validation cannot resolve internal doubt. It temporarily masks it. If self-worth is not internally generated, no amount of praise can stabilize it. This creates a cycle. Need approval, a relief, emptiness. Need the problem is not lack of validation. The problem is dependence on it. Breaking validation dependence does not mean rejecting feedback or connection. It means changing the source. Key shifts. 1. Replace approval seeking with value alignment. Ask, does this align with who I choose to be? 2. Tolerate disapproval. Discomfort is the cost of autonomy. 3. Build internal validation rituals. Self-respect must become habitual. When validation comes from within, external approval becomes optional, not necessary. That is psychological power. Seeking validation is human. Being controlled by it is optional. The moment you stop asking the world who you are, you begin to decide. If this video resonated, reflect before you react. And remember, freedom begins where approval ends.